So hello again, this is Rashid Ali and one of the reporters of Chapter 5 on its very last part, which is the other tools in assessment in educational settings. So on this video, we are going to talk about three different main topics, which includes their several subtopics. For the first topic is the other tools in assessment in educational settings, and it consists of different tools which includes the concept map, concept test, knowledge survey, exams, oral presentation, poster presentations, peer review, portfolios, rubrics, and written report. So as you are hearing those topics, there is an idea in our mind, of the things that we have already experienced in school during our past level of education. So next is the other assessment types that are quite rarely used, but still used in some educational setups. So first is the concept sketches, case studies, seminar style courses, and mathematical thinking and performance assessment. And for the last topic, we're going to talk about the psychological test battery, which includes the test battery or explanation of what is test battery, the standardized test battery, and test batteries for specific population, and working memory test battery for children. So the intended learning outcome for this video is that we must able to identify other tools in assessment in educational settings. So that's our main goal. So we have to proceed to the first topic. So the first in the other tools in assessment in educational settings is the concept map. So concept map is a diagramming technique for assessing how well students see the big picture. And a concept map is one of the several types of graphic organizer that can be used to show the relationships between or within concepts, ideas, theories, hypotheses, structures, processes, models, and so on. So concept maps are very useful, especially if you are looking for an innovative, multifunctional, evidence-based assessment method that can provide you with insightful information about students' comprehension of complex concepts. So in a snapshot format. So concept maps are a powerful learning tool that promotes deep, meaningful learning and as opposed to rote and superficial learning. But they can do more than provide learning tasks. So concept maps can be used as a visual teaching tool and to assess students' knowledge you otherwise may not have access to. So concept maps are really good for collaborative learning because we are able to see, as a teacher, we are able to see how well our students know a certain thing or the topic that we are on the lecture. So it's like we try to give an anchoring topic and then we ask for the students to contribute their or the associated words that they could think to that certain anchoring topic. So that's how concept map works. So it usually happens in school, but not really on a test, but as a form of instructional material for teachers to further explain what is their lecture or what are their lectures for that certain meeting. So that's how it is. So next is the concept test. So a concept test is a conceptual multiple choice questions that are useful in a large classes. And concept tests are also known as the concept tests, which don't have the space and only one T, and are short, informal, targeted tests that are administered during class to help instructors gauge whether students understand a key concept. So they can be used both to assess students' prior knowledge or their understanding of the content in the current course. Usually these tests consist of 1 to 5 multiple choice questions. So students are asked to select the best answer and submit it by raising their hands or holding up a color card associated with the response option, or it really depends upon the professor or the teacher, or even like using a remote control device to key in their response. So the primary purpose of concept tests is to get a snapshot of the current understanding of the class, not of an individual student. So as a result, concept tests are usually ungraded or very low stakes. So they are most valuable in large classes where it is difficult to assess students' understanding in real time. So parang siyang pangmaramihan kasi. So one of the example is there. You can see it on your screen. So yung question is about the concept kasi, no? So at which location in the diagram below would the waves break closer to the beach? So that's how you are going to see the gauge, or you are going to see the ranges of the knowledge of the person. And it is typically evaluated or initiated or administered just right after the lecture of the teacher. So ganun yung concept test. So next on the list is knowledge survey. So knowledge survey is actually where the students answer whether they could answer a survey of course content questions. And this type of tool consists of a series of questions that cover the full content of a course. So the surveys evaluate students' learning and content mastery at all levels. So from basic knowledge and comprehension through higher levels of thinking. And knowledge surveys can serve as both formative and summative assessment tools. So they help students learn, help faculty improve their classrooms, and aid departments and programs as they explore new curricula and pedagogies. So on the knowledge survey, it's like a diagnostic test, the pre-test and the post-test that teachers are trying to administer to students before and after the semester or the grading period. This is to assess how well do the students know the course content for the overall meeting. It's in general, not just for a certain topic. So the student, or the purpose of this is for the teacher also to adjust his or her teaching skill or teaching technique to the students. So if the students quite learn a lot from the topic or from the course content, so then the teacher can fully boost and expect that students can understand whatever he or she is saying, or even the jargons that the teacher may say. So or something like that. So it's very helpful. So a pre-test and a post-test is usually a similar test lang naman, just to assess if there is a change after we administer a lecture to the students, parang ganon. So next is the exams. So exams is very popular because you always do it like every midterm or final term of a semester, ganon. So exams are typically seen as a good way of testing course knowledge, as they require every member of the course to learn the same thing and answer the same question. So meaning it is a standardized set of tests. Exam is a standardized, kunyari, it's not just for one student, but as buong class na or buong batch in general. This is to assess the knowledge of individual in a similar battery of tests. Parang ganon. So this ensures a uniform means of assessing multiple individuals, with all students being examined on the same basic level of difficulty and understanding. So exams therefore provide an even playing field, so everyone is assessed on the same thing in the same amount of time. So that's how exams are working. Next on the list is the oral presentations. So oral presentations are a form of assessment that calls on students to use a spoken word to express their knowledge and understanding of the topic. So it allows capture of not only the research that the students have done, but also the range of cognitive and transferable skills. So oral presentations are also known or widely known as the recitations. So nangyayari dito is either you are being called or you volunteer to recite on the front of the class, and then the teacher try to give a follow-up question to your explanation. So it's quite personal to the person, or it's modified to fit the student, the specific student that is presenting orally. So ganun siya. it is trying to assess the gauge of every individual, and it's really good for classes with small number of students kasi you can see them, natututukan mo sila. So next is the poster presentations. So poster presentations are often used to assess students' learning from student individual and group research project, and often used as scientific conference. So as you can see there, it's quite complex, para siyang brochure. But actually, its poster presentation is like, meron kayong group project or group activity, and then you do it, and then you put it on a Manila paper, something like that, and then you present it on the board. So that Manila paper is now what we call the poster. So you present it, you present the overall idea of what you have learned in a single Manila paper or in a single poster. Parang ganun siya. So it's like a compressed topics. So nandoon na siya, very concise lang. So you just have to expound it through your voice or orally, parang ganon. So next is the peer review. So having students assess themselves and each other. So peer assessment or peer review provides a structured learning processes for students to critique and provide feedback to each other on their work. So it helps students develop lifelong skills in assessing and providing feedbacks to others. And also equips them with skills to self-assess and improve their own work. So peer review kasi, it's like a very collaborative learning through, you give a constructive criticism to your fellow students. So it's a student-to-student communication, a student-to-student learning, and it involves an engagement of one student and another. So it's not really as pressuring as student to teacher, because you know that a teacher is really good. So a teacher can see all the fault in the writings or in the work of a student. But if a student and a student talk to themselves, so it might lessen or it might break the gap of you being so afraid of getting corrected. Diba? Kasi magka-level lang kayo. So peer assessment can first empower students to take responsibility and or for them to manage their own learning. So it's like you are going to reflect on how you've learned things, and then you try to apply it in criticizing or in giving a critique to your friends or peers' activity. Also, it enables students to learn to assess and give others constructive feedback to develop lifelong assessment skills. And then, it enhances students' learning through knowledge diffusion and exchange of ideas. And lastly, it motivates students to engage with course material more deeply. Kasi you are forced to draw something from you, a learning from you. You are forced to draw it, because how can you critique, diba, if you don't know anything about this certain topic or this certain activity that you're doing? So one of the example is something like this. And not all peer reviews really look that sporadic. There are some peer reviews that can be very fixed or very formal. It really depends upon how the teacher wants it to be. But then this is a common example of that, where you try to show your friend or your classmate your work and then let them do the correction, and so that you will see where parts are your errors in your work. So parang ganun siya. So next is the portfolio. So portfolio is a collection of evidence to demonstrate mastery of a given set of concepts. So a portfolio may be used to show growth over time. It may be used to promote a student's abilities, or it may be used to evaluate students' learning within a specific course. So we really know this portfolio from our elementary classes, kasi there is really this portfolio where you have to personalize it, and then you have to put all your activities in there. So the main reason for that actually is for the teacher to know and assess your academic development over time. So it's it's very personal, and that's where they're going to track your progress if you really are having a problem or a progress to learning your skill through the school year. Parang ganun siya. So its purpose may also be a combination of all three areas. So three areas are listed on the screen. First is a portfolio assessment demonstrates learning over the course of time rather than what a student know in a particular day. So there could be times that in a regular basis, this student A is very excelling, very engaging, but then on certain meetings, on several meetings, the student A is not really active. So then with the use of portfolio, you can trace whether the person is really good in general or just on a specific areas in the course content. So parang ganun yun. So next is a portfolio assessment provides an opportunity for a student to reflect on their learning, to assess or to self-assess, and to formulate a deeper understanding of the concepts they are learning beyond a simple surface explanation. So also, if you really have this portfolio with you, you can also try to self-assess. You just have to check your progress by checking the activities that you have made, if you really are learning your exam or learning the lesson or not. So it's just like the first use of this. So in the third use, a portfolio assessment requires a great level of individual interaction between the student and teacher, wherein they are always collaborating about the requirements and components going into the portfolio. So yun na nga, since portfolio is personalized, so the teacher and the student will have a more relatable environment for that. So next is the rubrics. So a rubric is a set of evaluation criteria based on the learning goals and student performance. So a rubric nga is a type of scoring guide that assesses and articulates specific components and expectation for an assignment. So rubrics can be used for a variety of assignments: research papers, a group project, portfolio, and even presentation. So yun nga, rubrics is a set of pointers for your activity. So kunyari, when the professor or when the teacher gives you first of the rubric is the artistic design, parang ganon, the artsy of the work. So at least you will have your idea or guide on where to give emphasis on your work, because there is a rubric or there is a set of guidelines where if you meet a certain guideline, then you will get 100% of the score, parang ganon. Or if you're just passing for compliance, so ang mangyayari is that parang magkakaroon ka ng either 50% of grade, parang ganon. So it will be clear for you what to expect or what grade you should be expecting depending upon how well you are putting effort to your studies or your activity, parang ganon. So rubrics help instructors in several ways. So first is it assesses assignments consistently from student to student. Next is save time in grading, kasi di ba, you do not have to assess them one by one because or ng mano-mano kasi you have your guides naman din naman. So you have your guides upon seeing whether the work is already good enough or not. So it's like a standardized criteria for judging, parang ganon. So both short-term and long-term. One of the rubrics also is the grading system, where you have the oral presentation, a percentage for oral presentation, for written works, and so on, something like that. Anyway, on the third help of the rubric is that it gives timely, effective feedback and promotes student learning in a sustainable way. Next is it clarifies expectations and components of an assessment for both students and course teaching assistants. Excuse me. So yun na nga yung sinasabi ko. It clarifies expectations and components. So there is a concrete target that you are about to hit in doing your activity, so that you won't have any confusion with what to put emphasis or what to emphasize on your activity. So it's something like that. So for the last part, it refines teaching methods by evaluating rubric result. So that's how it is, if the student is following instructions or the rubrics or not. So next is the written reports. So ayan, so for the written reports, these are actually classic assessments used by faculty. So written reports may be as short as a 1-minute paper and as long as a term paper. So parang ganon. So the article weekly reports, or a two-way feedback tool, science education cited by at Kina on the year of 2000. So it describes how to use weekly reports written by students as a two-way feedback tool in teaching. So written reports actually includes many things, like yung nangyayari ngayon sa atin. So we have the video, we have the PowerPoint presentation, and then the written reports where we try to summarize everything that we are discussing. And it's also good for teachers in giving student a good instructional material, so that the student will have a concise, summarized idea from the whole module, parang ganon. Anyway, let's go back. So the weekly reports help students to reflect on their knowledge and learn how to ask questions and predict what questions their teacher is likely to ask. So that's why there is a written report for us also students to know kung saan kukuha ng, for exam purposes, yung ating professor or teachers. So we will have an idea what to study and what really not to pay attention. Parang ganon. Meron tayong priorities na topics and merong not so priority. And then next is the reports help teachers to identify the difficulties their students experiencing while learning new materials, or to adjust their teaching to the students' needs and to match the level of difficulty of learning and testing. So ganon nga. Anyway, that's the last subtopic for the first main topic, which is the other tools that is used in educational setting. So next is the other assessment types that are not really commonly used by the teacher in a classroom setting. So first on that is concept sketches. So a concept sketch is a sketch, or let's say diagrams, that are concisely annotated with short statements that describe a process, concept, and interrelation shown in the sketch. Or having students generate their own concept sketches is a powerful way of students, or for students, to process concept and convey them to others. So there are actually two ways the concept test can be used. So first is for teachers to assess the students. They are going to give you something like this, as you can see on the board or on the screen. It is a concept sketch of a science lecture. So we are going to talk about science there and how it affects. Para siyang it's a note, you're jotting down note, pero in a more creative way lang. So this way, the student can really understand what the teacher is trying to show, and also for the teacher to understand how well does the person can really comprehend. Parang ganon. So the next thing that it can be of help is for teachers to easily send to students what they really want to teach. So parang it's like a concept map din, but it's quite different in some other terms. Yun yung concept sketch. So mas madali for teachers to teach students if there is something like this, an artistic way of presenting the topic. So it will be refreshing in the eyes of the students, so they will learn more about it, or they will be very interested in learning more about your topic because of that. So those are the two ways that the concept sketch can be used of. So next is the case studies. And also I've included there the seminar kasi it's quite the last part. So case studies are the methods involving placing students in the role of decision making and asking them to address a challenge that may confront a company, nonprofit organization, or government department. So, in the absence of a single straightforward answer, students are expected to exchange ideas and consider possible theoretical explanations and data and weigh up possible solutions. So, based on this exchange and evaluation of mixed idea or data, they're expected to come up with a decision and choose a solution to a particular challenge. So, though case study learning is an assessment may take many forms, the common thread is that the case study involves a real life situation and finding solutions in a focus of the assessment. So, in our case, college students, 3AB psychology. So, the case studies we do is like nung kagaya nung we talked about the case of the Magwad. So it's like we are trying to learn how the works or how the situation happened. You know, we are trying to study the case of that. So we are trying to go through that, and at some point, kasi sa atin it's very ano na iba na yung very advanced na yon. So in a simple setup, kunyari in a high school or elementary setup din naman, it's like role playing where the teacher gives you a scenario, and then he or she is going to assess your comprehensive skills or your thinking logics. Yeah, the teacher is going to assess that by how you are going to uh, attack the certain situation. Kunyari, the question is, you are needy of money, and then you have seen a wallet sa daan. So what are you going to do? Are you going to keep that, or are you going to return that to the owner? So it's just like that. So the teacher is going to test your comprehensive skills and your rational thinking through that. So that's how you are going to be tested through case studies. So next is the seminar type courses or seminars, simply seminars. So sabi dito, a small classes typically driven by discussions and other forms of active learning, and in which students often take on teaching roles and responsibilities. So offer tremendous opportunities for students and educators to make learning experience meaningful and lasting. But seminars don't run themselves. So this kind of learning does not happen automatically. It comes out of organization, planning, and a thoughtful, responsive harnessing of the energy and interpersonal potential in the room. So seminars actually are, that's why seminar is listed in this category, because it is rarely used as a form of assessing the learning of student or the gauge of the learning of student. Kasi seminar needs a different type of people in the group. So the facilitator, and also you must have someone that is really knowledgeable of the topic as a speaker, something like that. So it requires a lot of time, a lot of effort to do in order for you to conduct a really good seminar. So it's something like that. Anyway, for the last subtopic in this topic or main topic is the mathematical thinking and performance assessment. So sabi dito, using performance assessment for math is a great way to help your students develop higher level thinking skills and apply what they know. So performance assessment is a way to evaluate that allows students to demonstrate their knowledge of a particular concept through application. And most of the time, it is through real life situation that the students have an opportunity to show what they know about what they've learned. So that's why it's also rare kasi hindi naman siya applicable on all subjects or on all subjects. So it's really applicable lang onto mathematical subjects like, statistics, parang ganon, the algebra, trigonometry, something like that, or on research in a quantitative way. So the idea of this one is you are going to be tested as a student in a way of giving you, serving you a question, and applied a question with a real life situation with applied math in there. So you can see there on the screen that the question is about a plane. So how could a plane move or fly, something like that. So there will be mathematical concepts there that you are going to study. There are mathematical equations that you are going to prove. So this is also helpful for us to apply what we have learned in a daily basis. So that wraps up the second topic or second main topic of this video. And now we are going to the third part, which is the test batteries. Now for a test battery or clinical and counseling assessment, we are going to talk about test battery here. So the two types, which is the standardized test battery and the test batteries for specific population. And then lastly, the working memory test battery for children naman. So let's start with learning what is a test battery. So in pre-employment testing, a test battery refers to a set of tests. So I just want to clarify that it's not really about ano na ngayon. It's not about the educational setup. It's about on a general na use of test battery. Alright, again, so a test battery refers to a set of tests grouped together and administered to application for a particular position. So test batteries vary from position to position depending on the job's requirement and the needs of the employer. So for example, companies hiring maintenance workers and they may want to administer a test of mechanical aptitude to assess the applicant's ability to work with machinery and tools. So they may also want to administer a basic skill test to measure attention to detail and to see how trainable the applicant may be. And finally, they may want to administer a personality test to predict how trustworthy, honest, and rule adherent the applicant will be. So combined, these three are the constitute to a test battery, and that they can be administered to applicants as a sequence. While test batteries are highly customizable to the applicants, sum total of the time required to take all these tests within a battery should not be too long so as to avoid test fatigue. So the idea of the test battery is it is a set of tests that are administered together, and that set of tests is what we call a test battery or battery of tests. So ganon. So it's like it really depends upon what you are seeking for. So yun na nga, in an office or in an organizational view, kunyari you are about to hire a secretary. So what do you want as an HR? Anong gusto mong makita to your applicants? So what do you want to know? You want to test their personality, or you want to test how well they are in stressful situations, parang ganon. Will an MMPI to a good test for that, or yung Wilchester, is that a good test to administer for the student, so or for the employee rather. So if you can find na what you want to test the student, then you pile them up and then you administer them simultaneously doon sa iyong employee. So that is what we call a battery of tests or series of tests or test battery. So ganun yon. And a test battery consists of series of tests administered to assess different facets of either a child or adult, or like any employee's functioning, like psychosocial or psychological functioning, parang ganon. So a test battery is utilized by a professional or must be a psychologist, something like that, or could be a psychometrician to assess or to assist in decision making, such as making a diagnosis or about an individual and determining whether there is a need for service and support for that person. So introduced by Francis Galton in the year 1984, the initial test battery was used to measure an individual's sensory and motor abilities. But once the battery of tests was administered, a report was written to summarize the finding, and then test batteries have evolved over time. So hindi na siya about doon. So you can talk more than the sensory and the motor abilities. So since there is an evolution, so also psychometrics have really made their way to evolve the test din naman, and for them to test not just the sensory and motor skills but also for the logics and the personality of the employee for them to work better in a company. Parang ganon. So yun na nga, I'm talking about the two different types, excluding the working memory test battery for children. So first is the standardized test battery. So ito yung standardized. So hindi siya pwedeng i-adapt and then i-edit mo. Hindi siya pwedeng ganon. It's a series of tests. So one of the great example of this is the Sherpa or Smith-Kline-Harwell Imperial College Royal Hospital Phenotype Assessment. So, yun na nga. According to Hatcher et al. Na 2001 and Rogers et al. On the years 1997, 1999, and 2001, it provides 3 levels of screening for behavioral phenotypes. So, it is actually a mouse phenotypic assessment. So, it mainly tests the sensory functions and emotions. Parang ganon. Anyway, it provides 3 levels of screening for behavioral phenotypes. So for a first level, the observation assessment. And then for the next level is the functional screening battery and pathological analysis. And the tertiary screen for functioning is the neurological mutants. So, in general, the Sherpa screen has standard operating procedures and has been used to compare the behavioral phenotypes of inbred mouse strains, age-related strains, and behavior in Lual, according to Rogers' study and et al. On the year of 2001. So, it basically is a very clinical, it's very scientific, for us to really understand in a single video or in a single lecture. So we have to further, we have the responsibility to further study about it, or the Sherpa, especially it is really essential for us in our course. So next is the test batteries for specific populations. So we have different examples of test batteries for a specific population. So also various standard test batteries have been developed or have assembled for specific purposes and population. And many of these are reviewed in an excellent neuropsychological test compendiums by Spreen and Strauss in the year 1982 and Lezak on the year 1995. So yun na nga. So first is we have the SERAD, or the Consortium to Establish a Registry for Alzheimer's Disease. So it is actually a neuropsychological assessment battery that was developed for use in patients with known or suspected dementia. So it is only a 30 to 45-minute examination of cognitive skills. That includes measuring the orientation, verbal fluency, naming, verbal learning, and memory. And of course, since we're talking about Alzheimer's, it is also included there the measurement of graphomotor constructional skills. So this series of battery really has a good reputation kasi a very good reliability and validity have been demonstrated. And also, normative data for older adult population are available, according to the study of Welsh et al. On the year 1994. So that is first. So it's a specific population which is for those people who might have or already had Alzheimer's disease. So ganun yun. So next is the National Institute of Mental Health Core Neuropsychological Battery. So it is actually developed to evaluate cognitive changes associated with HIV infection. So how does the HIV affect our neurocognitive function? Parang ganun yun. So there are 2 type of battery. First is the 1 to 2 hours, and then next is an extended version which is 9 to 7 hours. And it is to comprise of standard clinical neuropsychological tests and measures used in cognitive psychology were assembled in order to assess the following cognitive ability areas. So, yun na nga, it's going to test the premorbid IQ, the attention, the speed of information processing, learning and memory, abstract reasoning, language, visoperceptual, and graphomotor constructual abilities. And also the psychomotor skills na rin. Kasi yun nga, we're talking about neurological or neuropsychological battery. It includes tests that provide information regarding patterns of cognitive deficit as commonly seen in degenerative conditions that affect cortical and particularly subcortical cerebral function. So, ganun yun. So, third an example is the Pittsburgh Occupational Exposures Test Battery. So, it's on the study of Ryan, Morrow, Bromé, and Parkinson in the year 1989. So it was developed to evaluate those cognitive functions most commonly affected by exposure to environmental toxins. So it comprises a series of 15 standard and experimental neuropsychological measures that assess a variety of abilities in a reasonable brief amount of time, or let's just say in approximately 90 minutes. And factor analysis of the battery revealed the following 5 domains. So first is general intelligence, next is the attention, learning and memory, visospatial and psychomotor speed, and manual dexterity. So those are the three specific or test batteries that can be used for specific populations only. So lastly, we have here the working memory test battery for children. So now it's for children. So it's also kind of specific and kind of standardized for children. So its main point actually is to assess concept in working memory in young school-aged children. Anyway, let me read you this. The working memory test battery for children consists of 3 subtests designed to assess verbal working memory, listening recall, counting recall, and backward digit recall. So the author chose to assess verbal aspects of working memory because first, it has been proposed that deficits of verbal working memory and underlie language difficulties in specific language impairment or SLI, according to the study of Adams and Gattercole in the year 1996. And then the second is that significant correlation have been found between verbal working memory and receptive grammar in children with SLI or specific language impairment and in typically developing children. And now it's according to the article of Montgomery on the year 1995. So a phenomenological loop is made up for 4 subsets. So digit recall, word list recall, non-word list recall, and word list matching. So on all of these subtests, verbal information is presented and the task is to temporarily store the presented information. So that's how this test battery works. Anyway, we are done now with all of the topics that is covered of this video, and I really hope you have learned well. And if you have questions, you can comment it to the video. And also I will be attaching links then of other resources that will discuss the test battery even more, so you can see it in the caption part of this video. So that ends our discussion, and goodbye.